prime plus ht minus t prime at x prime x. So ht minus t prime is the minimal action needed to go from x prime to x in times t minus t prime. And of course, we do that for the t prime x prime in k, because that's where u is defined. So we showed that in general, the function u hat is continuous and strongly dominated on AB, A excluded, B included, times the interior of C. So let's go further and try to find out a condition which makes it also continuous on the closure. So if u, the function which is defined on k, is in fact a restriction to k of a continuous function v from AB times C into R, which is strongly dominated by L on AB times C, then u hat is larger than V everywhere. It is continuous. Okay, and okay, so let's, in the second proposition, I will speak about the viscosity part for u hat. The inequality u hat larger than u is an easy consequence of the strong domination of V by L, okay, because of the way the function u hat is defined. And to prove the continuity on AB times C, okay, because we proved the continuity on U on AB times the interior of C, including B, all we have to do is to prove continuity at points in K, not continuity on K, which is already granted because we assumed U continues, but continuity of U hat at every point in K. So we first start with a point in A cross C. Okay, so because U hat is U on K, we have to show that if we have a sequence which converges to AX with Tn large, strictly larger than A, then U hat of Tn xn converge to U of AX. Of course, if we assume all Tn equal A, then this is the continuity of U itself. So this continuity follows from the fact that V at Tn xn is less than U hat at Tn xn, which by definition of U hat is less than U at A xn, which is in K, plus Htn minus A xn xn. Now, this minimal action to go from xn to xn in time Tn minus A, as we saw several times, is less than A0 times Tn minus A. Okay, A0 is, let me remind you, A0 is just the function A that intervene in the boundedness condition on L on disk bundles, okay, and this is for the zero section, so this is nothing but the supremum of L of x0 for x in M. Now, why does it follow the continuity? It's because V of Tn xn goes to Ax to U of Ax because V is continuous and U is a restriction. And also the same thing here because U is continuous. The first term U of An xn goes to U of A of x. And the second, of course, goes to 0 when Tn goes to A. So it remains to prove continuity at a point Tx with T in AB, A excluded because we already dealt with the case T equal A, B included, but X in this case has to be in the boundary of C, okay, because of the definition of K. Now, suppose we have Tn xn, which converges to Tx. So because U is continuous on K, we can, so if Xn was in boundary of C, we wouldn't have the problem of convergence, and therefore we can assume that Xn is in the interior of C. So fix a T prime in AT, okay, with T prime less than T. So for n large enough, T prime is less than Tn, since Tn converges to T. And we have V of Tn xn is less than U hat of Tn xn. And because Tn is strictly larger than T, this is less than U of T prime x, which is in K, okay, plus Htn minus T prime xn x. Now, we can let n go to infinity. V of Tn x n will go to U of Tx. Okay, the first term here goes to U of Tx. So the lim inf here is larger than U of Tx. It's smaller than the lim sup. And if we look at what happens on the other side, so this quantity is independent of Tn, so this is less than U of T prime x, plus whatever is the lim sup or lim of Tn minus T prime xn minus x, because Tn minus T prime tends to T minus T prime, which is positive, okay, so H is, we are on the domain where H is continuous, and therefore the term Htn minus T prime xn x converges to Ht minus T prime xx, which is again smaller than A0 T minus T prime. Now we let T prime go to T. Okay, so we get that the lim inf and the lim sup of U hat are between U of Tx and itself. So they are equal, and this proves the convergence of U hat of Tn xn to U Tx, and this finishes the proof of the continuity of U hat on AB times C. Now let me come to the part of the viscosity part of, on U hat. So if U is the restriction of to K of a continuous function which is strongly dominated by L on AB times C. Oh, sorry. So this is the one I am just repeating it. So this is the one we just proved. Okay. And the second one is that, in fact, U hat itself is strongly dominated by L and the viscosity solution of the Hamilton-Jacobi equation. Okay, the strong domination, okay, on AB times C by continuity. So we know that U hat is already strongly dominated on AB, A excluded, B included times the interior of C. So that's something that comes out from the definition of U hat itself, so it's not such a big deal. But it's also continuous on the closure, so by continuity of the H, of the minimal action, we conclude that U hat is also strongly dominated on the closure. So therefore, U hat is a viscosity subsolution of the Hamilton-Jacobi equation, and it remains to prove that U hat is a viscosity supersolution. So we will use the approach already given in lecture 1. And we first recall that in lemma 13 of last lecture, we showed that for any T0, X0 in AB, A excluded, B included times the interior of C, for any such T0, X0, we can find a T prime X prime in K with T prime less than T, such that U hat of T0, X0 is equal to U of T prime X prime plus H T0 minus T prime of X prime X0. So the inf in the definition of U hat, okay, the inf in the definition of U hat is achieved. So let me now prove that you had a viscosity super solution on the interior of AB cross C. So suppose, so I'm going to check for a test. Suppose that psi is of class C1 with psi less than U hat on AB times the interior of C, and equality at T0 X0. So of course I want to prove that psi satisfies the super solution test. Okay. So we know that the infimum in the definition of U hat is attained by T prime X prime. And therefore we can find a curve T prime T0 with value into M with gamma of T0 equal X0 and gamma of T prime equal X prime. And the action is precisely the minimal action to go from X prime to X0 in time T0 minus T prime. Okay, so we get U hat of T0 X0 equal U of T prime X prime plus the integral of T prime to T0 of L of gamma S gamma dot S ds. So because U hat is strongly dominated, for every intermediary time between T prime and T0, we can write the inequality U of T0 is less than U hat of T gamma T plus the part of the action between T and T0 of gamma, and U hat of T gamma T is less than U of T prime X prime plus the part of the action of gamma from T prime to T. If you add them, you have equality. Therefore, the inequality must be equalities. And we conclude that U of T0 X0, U hat of T0 X0 is U hat of T gamma T plus the integral from T0 to T of L of gamma S gamma dot S ds. Okay. For every T in T prime T0, since psi is less than U hat, with equality at T0 gamma T0, which is T0 X0, we can replace here the U hat of T0 X0, so we get psi of T0 gamma of T0, and if we want to replace this one by the smaller value of psi at the same point, we get the inequality, psi of T0 gamma of T0, psi of T0 gamma T0 is larger than psi of T gamma T, plus the action from T to T0 of gamma. So we rewrite it by subtracting psi T gamma T on both sides, and we divide by T0 minus T, and we let T go to T0, so we get partial derivative. So we are computing the derivative of psi T at T equal T0, so we get the partial of psi T gamma T at T equal T0, so we get the partial derivative of psi at T0 X0 plus the partial derivative of psi with respect to X at T0 X0 evaluated at the point gamma dot of T0, and from the right hand side we just get only L of X0 gamma dot T0. Now by definition of L, we know that L of X gamma dot of T0 is larger than the momentum, which is the partial derivative of psi with respect to X at T0 X0 applied to the vector gamma dot T0 minus H X0, the momentum that we introduced, which is a partial derivative of psi with respect to X as T0 X0. Okay, so if we combine the two, we get the inequality, which is partial derivative of psi at T0 X0 plus partial derivative of psi at T0 X0 gamma dot applied to the vector gamma dot of T0, and we get the repetition of the same term on the right-hand side, minus H at X0, partial derivative of psi with respect to X at T0 X0, So this, of course, yields the test, the super solution test that we needed. So U hat is indeed a super solution also, and because it's dominated, it's a sub-solution and therefore a solution. Now we are going to prove the following corollary, which is what we need to go further for uniqueness and Lax-Oleinik formula, is that for every, suppose you have a viscosity solution of the evolution Hamilton-Jacobi equation defined on some open set of the product R cross M, then for every Tx in O, the open set, we can find a minimizer gamma parameterized on some interval T minus epsilon T, small interval before T, so with epsilon positive, ending at X, such that the graph of gamma is in O, and V of Tx is V of T minus epsilon, gamma T minus epsilon, plus the integral from T minus epsilon to T of L of gamma S, gamma dot S. Okay, so instead of having the inequality along that path, because V is being a solution is dominated by L on O, we have the equality. So that's what we will call later calibrated curve, but I didn't want to introduce too much terminology at that point. It's not really necessary. So to prove that, in fact, I remark that because it's a sub-solution, V is sub-solution, it's evolution dominated by L, and therefore by what we proved last time, locally strongly evolution dominated by L, and therefore if I fix Tx in O, I can find delta positive and R positive, such that T minus delta, T plus delta times the ball of center X radius R, everything closed, is included in O, and V is strongly evolution dominated on this product of a compact interval by a compact ball of finite radius around R. Now, as before, and now I take as interval T minus delta, T plus delta, and as compact set, the closed ball of center X and radius R. So I introduce K, which is a partial part of the boundary, T minus delta, T plus delta times the boundary of the ball of center X and radius R, union T minus delta times the boundary of X R. So I call U the restriction of V to X. And I, of course, extend U to U hat, okay, by defining U hat of Tx is the infimum of U of T prime X plus Ht minus T prime X prime X. T prime less than T, T prime X prime is in K. From what we did above, we know that U hat is continuous, and like V, it is a viscosity subsolution of the Hamilton-Jacobi equation on the interior of the interval T minus delta T plus delta times the interior of the ball of center X and radius R. Now, because V and U hat are both equal to U on the part of the boundary K, the maximum principle that we established last time implies that V and U hat are equal on whole of T minus delta T plus delta times B of the boundary times the ball of center X and radius R. So V is given by the formula here above that gives U hat of Tx, but we showed in lemma 13 in lecture 2 that the inf in the definition of U hat Tx is attained at every point Tx in the interior, and therefore we can find T prime X prime in t minus delta, t plus delta times the boundary, the closed boundary, okay? The boundary of the closed ball of center x and radius r, union t minus delta times the boundary, the ball, the closed ball of center x and radius r, and t prime less than t, and with vtx is vt prime x prime, so the infer u on k is v, and u hat in the interior is also v, so we get the same expression here. V of tx is equal to v of t prime x prime plus h t minus t prime x prime x. Okay, we can now pick a minimizer. Okay, parameterized by an interval, which is the interval t prime t. So if we define t prime as t minus epsilon, we can pick a minimizer t minus epsilon defined on t minus epsilon t, which start at x prime and end at x. And these minimizers give us exactly what we wanted, okay, because its action is a minimal action by definition of a minimizer. Now we are ready to prove that any continuous viscosity solution up to the boundary, we can find a minimizer which starts at 0 this time, ends at t, okay, and such that Vtx is V of 0 gamma 0 plus the integral from 0 to t of L of gamma S ds. So we found one from t minus epsilon to t. We want to go down up to 0. Or we want to go down to 0 with a minimizer and still satisfying the equality. So, as I said, we already found a minimizer parameterized by t minus epsilon t, ending at gamma t, which satisfies the equality that we want, okay, with for some epsilon positive. So gamma is a minimizer, and therefore it's an extremal, but as we said, extremals can be extended to be defined on minus infinity plus infinity, because by conservation of energy, the Euler-Lagrange flow is defined for all time. So we can extend this minimizer to C2 extremal, okay, of L defined on minus infinity plus infinity. I claim that for this C2 extremal, I also have V of Tx is the V of 0 gamma 0 plus the integral from 0 to t of L of gamma S gamma dot S ds. So to prove this, I introduce the set of A in 0t, which satisfies the equality V of Tx equal V of A gamma A plus the action of gamma between A and T. Now, for A equal T minus epsilon, this equality holds, and therefore T minus epsilon is in S, so S is not empty, and therefore I can consider its infimum, which I denote as A0, okay? Now, on the formula defining S, it's clear that, and continuity of V and the action of the gamma on an interval, it's clear that A0 is also in S. And therefore, we have V of Tx is V of A0 gamma 0 plus the action between A0 and T of gamma. Okay? If A0 is 0, then we have finished. It's exactly what we wanted. And we are going to obtain a contradiction if we assume that A0 is positive. In fact, I can apply the previous proposition at the point A0 gamma of A0, okay, and so I can find a small interval A0 minus epsilon tilde A0 and the minimizer, which ends up at gamma of A0 and satisfies the equality V of A0 gamma of A0 is V of A0 minus epsilon tilde gamma tilde of A0 minus epsilon tilde plus the action between A0 minus epsilon tilde and A0 of gamma tilde. So the picture is like that. I have my gamma here. I prove the equality that I wanted with A0 instead of 0. So what I do, I take a small piece ending at gamma of A0, which calibrates V, okay, in which the equality is true. And I define the concatenation here as the concatenation of gamma tilde on A0 minus epsilon 0, A0, and gamma on A0t, because gamma tilde of A0 is gamma of A0. This concatenation is a piecewise C1 part, okay? And now, so this is delta, I forget the part of gamma, which is before A0, and this part here satisfies from the following equalities, which we're defining gamma tilde and also A0. I have the equality, the two equalities, V of A0 gamma A0 is V of A0 minus epsilon tilde, gamma tilde of A0 minus epsilon tilde, plus the action from A0 minus epsilon tilde to A0 of gamma tilde, and Vt is V of A0 gamma of A0, plus the action of gamma on the interval A0t. If I add the two, this implies that the concatenation satisfies also the equality. Okay, so V of Tx is V of A0 minus epsilon tilde, delta of A0 minus epsilon tilde, because delta of A0 minus epsilon tilde is gamma tilde of A0 minus epsilon tilde, plus I'm adding the action on two subintervals, so I'll get the action on the union, which is exactly the interval A0 minus epsilon tilde to T of delta, okay? But because V is dominated by L on 0 plus infinity, the curve delta on 0 plus infinity times M, the curve delta is a minimizer, okay? And because it's a minimizer, it's an extremal, but delta on the interval A0t is also gamma in the interval A0t, because A0 is strictly less than t. That tells me that the position, not only the position of delta and gamma are the same at t, but also the speed is the same, because they are both extremals. They must coincide on their interval of definition. So delta is equal to gamma not only on A0t, but on A0 minus epsilon tilde t. And if I reinterpret now, because delta is equal to gamma, I reinterpret the equality above, I have V of Tx equal V of A0 minus epsilon tilde, gamma of A0 minus epsilon tilde, plus integral from A0 minus epsilon tilde to T of L of gamma S, gamma dot S ds. Okay? And this contradicts the definition of A0, because the equality above tells me that A0 minus epsilon tilde is in S, but A0 is the infimum of S. So this is a contradiction. And therefore I showed the proposition, the corollary, and once I have the corollary, I can prove the Lax-Oleinik formula for a viscosity solution defined on 0 plus infinity times m into r. So if I have a continuous function on 0 plus infinity, including 0 times m, okay, which is a viscosity solution on the interior, and I look at lowercase v as the value of v on 0 cross m, okay, the restriction of capital V on 0 cross m, then in fact, capital V is the Laxolinic evolution of lowercase v on 0 plus infinity times m. So equivalently, Vtx, V at the point tx is the infimum over all y in m of v of y plus htyx. And of course, the infimum is attained by the proposition that the corollary we proved before. Now, because V is continuous and is a viscosity subsolution on 0 plus infinity times m, it is strongly dominated by L, and therefore I have V of Tx is less than the infimum for y in m of V0 of y plus Htyx, which, so this is the infimum of lowercase v at y plus htyx, which is exactly the Lax-Oleinik evolution of v hat at tx. Now we obtained half of the inequality we need. We need the other inequality, okay? We need to show that capital V is larger than the infimum. Capital V at the point tx is larger than the infimum over all y in m of lowercase v at y plus h t of yx, which is exactly the Lax-Oleinik evolution of v at the point tx. So by the previous corollary, in fact not proposition, given tx with t positive and x in m, we can find the minimizer gamma with gamma of t equal x, okay? And such vt is v at tx is v at 0 gamma 0 plus the action from 0 to t of the path gamma, and but v of 0 gamma 0 is lowercase v at gamma 0, and the action of the path is larger than the minimal action to go from y to x in time t, okay? And therefore we just get that by this equality, in fact, it implies the inequality we want is that capital Vtx is larger than the Lax-Oleinik evolution of lowercase v at tx. So that proves the Lax-Oleinik formula, and once you have the Lax-Oleinik formula, you get uniqueness for viscosity solution of the evolution Hamilton-Jacobi equation for continuous function which are equal on 0 cross m, okay? So if you have two such viscosity solution which coincide at time t equals 0, they coincide everywhere. Okay, so this is automatic from what we said before, because they are both the Lax-Oleinik evolution of the restriction to 0 cross m. So when m is compact, the uniqueness theorem is proved first, then the Lax-Oleinik formula follows from the uniqueness. And in the non-compact case, we had to reverse the order of the proof. Okay, so that was now let me start. The next chapter in the course is about the point finiteness of the Lax-Oleinik evolution. So let me recall a few things about the Lax-Oleinik semi-group. I'll go very quickly on that. So the definition is given by t minus tu at x is infimum of u of y plus h of ty x, as we said. Okay, of course, you can take in this definition values anywhere between minus infinity, plus infinity, minus infinity, and plus infinity included. And a priori, t minus t of u has the same property. Okay, and of course, because ht of xy is a minimal action to go from x to y in time t. Okay, sorry, and ht of xy, I'm recalling, is a minimal action to go from x to y in time t, and you extend the semi-group for t equals 0 as the identity. So in the Lax-Oleinik evolution, of course, u hat of tx is t minus tu at x, and I'm going to, in fact, concentrate on function from m into minus infinity plus infinity, which are not identically plus infinity, because of the following lemma. If you have a function u on m, which take values in minus infinity plus infinity, if u is identically plus infinity, then so is its Lax-Oleinik evolution. If it's not identically infinity, if it's not identically plus infinity, then in fact, if u is not identically plus infinity, then the Lax-Oleinik evolution on the interior of 0 plus infinity times m never achieves the values plus infinity. Okay. So already we see that with this simple hypothesis, we can assume that u hat never reaches the value plus infinity away from 0 cross m. And of course, the proof is quite easy. If it's identically plus infinity, you replace in the definition of the Lax-Oleinik evolution, uy by plus infinity, you end up with plus infinity because ht of yx is finite. Now, if you can find an x0 such that u of x0 is not plus infinity, then of course u of tx is less than u of x0 plus ht of x0x, and because, again, ht of x0x is finite, the sum of the two is not plus infinity. Therefore, when the function u from m into minus infinity plus infinity is not identically to plus infinity, the finiteness of u hat at tx for a given t is equivalent to the fact that it is not minus infinity. Okay? So if you want to show that u hat of tx is finite, you just have to show that it's not minus infinity. So now we have the semi-group property for t minus t, and this is t minus t plus s of u at the point x is t minus s of the function t minus tu at the point x. And it implies, of course, that t minus t plus s of u at x is less than t minus tu of at y plus h of yx for all x, y in m, t non-negative and s positive. And this is what gave us the strong domination by L of u hat. Now, suppose that u hat, so this Lax-Oleinik evolution, is finite at some point t0 x0 with t0 positive, then it's finite everywhere on the strip, the open interval from 0 to 0 times m. Okay? For the values below t, provided we stay away from 0, u hat is finite. So in fact, if t is between 0 and t0 and y is in M, the strong evolution domination, okay, implies that u hat of t0 x0 is less than u hat of ty plus h t0 minus tyx, okay? So the left-hand side is finite. The minimal action here is finite, okay? So u hat ty is not minus infinity, and okay, and of course u cannot be plus infinity everywhere because of the hypothesis u hat of t0 x0 is finite for some t0 positive and some x0 in M, okay? Because if u was everywhere plus infinity, this could not happen. So in fact, we get that u hat of ty is finite at every point of the strip open interval 0 t0 times M. Now let me give an example with u hat finite everywhere. Suppose I have a Lipschitz function, theta defined on M, then theta hat is everywhere finite valued and is in fact bounded below by a globally Lipschitz function on 0 plus infinity times M. Okay. This implies that for any u from M into R, which is bounded below by a Lipschitz function, u hat is everywhere finite valued on 0 plus infinity times M and bounded below by a globally Lipschitz function also on 0 infinity times M. So to prove this, call K Lipschitz constant for theta. So theta y is larger than theta x minus K times the distance of xy. In fact, this is an inequality which is equivalent to theta being Lipschitz with Lipschitz constant K. It's okay, because this is valid for every xy. So it's a different way to write down that theta is Lipschitz with Lipschitz constant K. And the superlinearity of L, as we have seen, implies that the minimal action to go from y to x in time t is larger than k distance of y to x minus c of kt. So I wrote it for k, the Lipschitz constant of theta, but it's also true for any non-negative k. This is the superlinearity of L, and C is the function that is associated with the superlinearity of L. So if I add to this inequality the inequality expressing that theta is Lipschitz, I get that theta y plus ht of yx is larger than theta x minus ckT, and therefore the Lac-Soleinic evolution theta hat at tx is larger than theta x minus ckT. Okay, obviously the function on the right is a Lipschitz function on 0 plus infinity time M, which bounds below theta hat. Now, if u is bounded below by a Lipschitz function theta, we know that u hat is bounded below by theta hat everywhere. And this, of course, finishes the proof to show that u hat is bounded, is finite everywhere and bounded below by a Lipschitz function. So let me give an example with u hat not necessarily finite everywhere. So for this, I just take the Lagrangian, the Tonelli Lagrangian, which is the simplest one. It's 1/2 of norm of the speed square. We know that the minimal action is distance from y to x squared divided by 2t. I already said that. I will show it next time, but it's okay. So we get that u hat of tx is equal to the infimum of u of y plus dyx squared divided by 2t. Okay, and let's look at the case of a function u alpha defined like that. Alpha is some positive number. We fix some x0 in M and define u alpha by u alpha at x is minus alpha distance from x0 to x squared. So you get that u alpha of tx is the infimum over y in M of minus alpha distance of x0 y squared plus the distance of y to x squared divided by 2t. So if M is not compact, so of course if M is compact, this is always finite, but if M is not compact, then t minus tu alpha is minus infinity everywhere as soon as minus alpha plus 1 over 2t is negative. Okay, so this is quadratic, this is quadratic. So if the coefficient in front of it here is more negative than 1 over 2t, which is exactly what I expressed here, then of course it's a quadratic function and with negative coefficient, so it will go to minus infinity when x go to infinity. So this is equivalent, this inequality minus alpha 1 over 2t is negative, is equivalent to t is larger than 1 over 2 alpha, and in fact, t minus t u alpha is finite everywhere for t less than 1 over 2 alpha, because here the coefficient in front of the quadratic coefficient in the quadratic function will overtake the negative coefficient here. Note, however, that u alpha is finite. U alpha 1 over 2 alpha x0 is finite. In fact, it's equal to 0. So from the previous lemma, it's another proof that it's finite for t less than 1 over 2 alpha. So there are indeed cases where the function u hat is not finite everywhere. And for this, we have only used function u, which are continuous function. Let me give now an example of a function which is u, which is not finite everywhere. So suppose I take a non-empty subset of M, then the distance function, as you know, the distance from function to C is defined by dc at x is the infimum of the distances of any point C in C to x. So now let me use the modified characteristic function French function. I don't know why it's French, but it's like that. Zeta C is a function from M with value in 0 plus infinity. So usually characteristic function is in function with 0, 1. Now instead of 0, 1, we use 0 plus infinity, which are respectively plus infinity is the 0 for the addition in the inf plus algebra, okay? And 0 is the unit for the multiplication in the inf plus algebra, okay? So it's kind like the characteristic function in the for the idempotent real algebra, or what they call the tropical algebra in algebraic geometry. Okay, and this is defined in the following way. Zeta, sorry, it's not a zeta, it's a psi. Psi C at x is 0 if x is in C, and plus infinity if x is not in C. Because C is not empty, C is not identically plus infinity. So we are in the case where we know that this function is going to be finite everywhere because it's never plus infinity and it's bounded below by a constant. It's non-negative, so its Lax-Oleinik evolution also will be bounded below. Okay, in fact, what we have is the Lax-Oleinik evolution of zeta c at Tx is the distance from x to c squared divided by 2t for all t positive. And this follows easily from zeta c at Tx is the infimum of zeta c of y plus distance of yx squared divided by 2t for y in M. Okay, to take the infimum, I should not bother with the values plus infinity, but the only other value is 0. Okay, so it's the infimum for c in C of the distance of c to x squared, okay, divided by 2t, which is exactly the distance from x to c squared divided by 2t. And I think it's a good moment to stop for espresso. Okay, we'll stop for 10 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
May I ask a question?
Thank you.
Sure, you can.
No, I have two questions. So if you
But
have
you said, may I ask a question? So
two questions. So the first one is, if you have a solution, a continuous solution of the time-dependent equation with initial datum, let's say g, then g hat is finite, right?
well, you have a continuous solution defined for all time?
Yes.
Well, I told you G hat is equal to the solution.
Okay.
So it's finite.
Okay. And second question, the corollary before theorem 6.
Yes.
Can you prove it for for Lagrangian that are not regular? I mean, not just continuous. I mean, you use the flow.
Well, I probably do not need to do that. We discussed that point already in Rome, and
Okay, yes.
you convinced me that you can do it. We will have to. Let's meet and do it.
Okay.
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 Let's
Okay,
write the next course with L Lagrangian, not necessarily differentiable. I think it works, but in this kind of thing, I have always the doubt, should I assume some strict convexity or not?
Okay.
I think not, but I want to make sure 100%.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. Okay, we shall discuss it in another occasion, maybe.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
When we can meet.
Sure.
Okay, so let's stop for coffee 10 minutes.
Yeah, okay, have a nice
Okay.
coffee. See you later.
Here in 10 minutes. we start again.
Okay. So now, a priori, when you define the Laxolenic evolution, even if you assume it's finite everywhere, it's not clear it's continuous or a viscosity solution. So the goal now is the following theorem. Suppose you have a function u defined on M with values between minus infinity minus infinity and plus infinity included, and assume that u hat t0, x0 is finite for some t0 and some x0 in M. Then the function u hat is in fact continuous on the strip, open strip, 0t0 times M. We have already shown that it is necessarily finite there. Okay. And moreover, it's a viscosity solution of the Laxolenic evolution of the Hamilton-Jacobi equation on the same strip. So we know already that u hat is finite, as I said. So let me make some comment first that will justify our line of proof. So what is the problem about showing the continuity? I have a formula here for it. It's an infimum of functions. When is an infimum of function continuous? Okay, well, it can happen by a miracle, but usually it's because the family of function on which you take the infimum is equicontinuous or locally equicontinuous. Okay, so what you need, okay, is something related to equicontinuity. Now, the first remark is, of course, I want to get rid of the part of the function which give me plus infinity, is that the inf is the same as the inf on the subset of M where u is finite. Okay, you can get rid of the place where it's plus infinity, and it never takes the value minus infinity, because if it take at some point the minus infinity, u hat would be identically minus infinity. So let's consider this family of function. It is indeed continuous. Okay, let's fix y and consider this as a family of function in y's, such that absolute value of y is u of y is finite. So each one of these functions is continuous, okay, for y fixed, okay, independently of what u of y is, because once you fix y, this is just a constant, so the continuity comes from the continuity of the minimal action. So the function u hat is definitely upper semi-continuous because it's an inf of continuous function, but this is not enough. We want continuity. Now, the function here, HTYX, is continuous as a function of the triple Txy, provided T is positive, okay? It's only h of T of xy. There is no u of y here. So the minimal action so forget about the u of y here. Let me just strike it. Okay. So the function Txy maps to Htyx is continuous on M cross M. So in fact, if I restrict to the case where M is compact, because this is a family of continuous map with M compact, in fact, it is locally equicontinuous on 0 plus infinity times M. Okay? This family here, if Y moves in a compact set, will be locally equicontinuous in Tx. And when M is compact, so this is the case, and therefore the inf in the definition is also continuous provided it is finite. Okay, it will have the same modulus of continuity as the locally equicontinuous family of functions. Now, unfortunately, when M is not compact, you cannot say that the family of function, epsilon y, y in M, okay, absolute value of u of y is finite. It's not clear that it is equicontinuous because the set of y involved there is not compact. And what makes things work is, in fact, we can locally restrict the inf in the definition of u hat to a compact subset, as we will now show or state, and it will take us some time to show. So suppose you have a function u hat, such that u hat at t0 x0 is finite for some t0 positive. Then for every compact subset in the open strip 0 t0 time M, for every compact subset K in the open strip, we can find a compact subset K tilde in M. So K here is a set in Tx, and K tilde is only a subset in M, with the property that u hat of Tx is the infimum of u of y plus ht of yx for all y. Now, only in K tilde, we don't have to go beyond K tilde to compute u hat, and this will remain true for all Tx in K, in the compact set K. So we deduce from that theorem the desired result, which is, okay, u hat is continuous and the viscosity solution. So let me give the proof of the corollary. So I fix Tx in the open strip and the compact neighborhood of Tx in that open strip. And by theorem 13, which I'm going to prove later, we can find a compact subset K tilde such that u hat of Tx is the infimum for y in K tilde of u of y plus ht of yx for all Tx in K. Okay. Now let us look at the set K tilde f, the set of y, such that in K tilde, such that u of y is finite. Because u hat is finite, in fact, we need only to take the inf over the y in K tilde f. Now it's a family of function, okay, but defined on the compact set K, and because the y now moves in a compact set which is K tilde, the second function here, okay, because this is continuous on 0 t0 time m time m, and both K and K tilde are compact, the family of maps Tx maps to h of Tx for y in K tilde is equicontinuous on K, and therefore, because the inf for y in K tilde f so this function now for y in k tilde f is, this family of function is also equicontinuous for y in k tilde f, because u of y is like a constant that I add to each one of this map. It doesn't change the continuity modulus. And because the inf now in that formula is finite, the inf is continuous on the neighborhood k of tx, but the neighborhood k of tx is of course arbitrary, and that proves that the continuity. Now I'm going to show that u hat is a viscosity solution of the Hamilton-Jacobi equation in the case where u is finite valued and continuous. Okay, so by theorem 13, we can find a compact subset k tilde included in M, such that u hat of tx is the infimum of u of y plus ht of yx for y in k tilde. So now I am assuming that y is continuous, and because t is positive, the map y maps to hy plus htyx is continuous in y, and therefore the infimum over the compact set k tilde is achieved, and hence I can find yx in k tilde such that u hat of tx is u of yx plus ht of yxx. Okay, by an argument from lecture 1 and repeated at the beginning of this lecture in the proof of proposition 3, the function u hat is a viscosity solution of the Hamilton-Jacobi equation. Okay, it's because once it's achieved, once the infimum in the definition is achieved, I know that it's a viscosity solution. I showed that in lecture 1, okay, for the case when u hat is finite everywhere, but this is the same argument if you stop at t0. And I also repeated it in the proof of proposition 3 of this lecture. So I'm not going to repeat it again. So that proves that u hat is indeed a viscosity solution of the Hamilton-Jacobi equation in the case u is continuous. Now let's go to the general case when u is not necessarily continuous. Fix epsilon between 0 and t0 and define u epsilon of x as u hat of epsilon x. So this is just the Laxolenic evolution. Sorry, yeah, it's the Laxolenic semi group at epsilon applied to u. We already showed that this function, if epsilon is positive and fixed, is continuous, because we showed that the Laxolenic evolution is continuous on the strip 0 t0 time m. Okay, so this function is continuous. Moreover, if you compute the Laxolenic evolution of u epsilon, it's at tx, it's nothing but the Laxolenic evolution u hat of u at t plus epsilon x. Okay, so in particular, u epsilon of t0 minus epsilon x0 is finite, and from the case we proved above, okay, because u epsilon is continuous, I conclude that u hat epsilon of tx is a viscosity solution on 0 t0 minus epsilon time m. But u epsilon tx is u hat of t plus epsilon x. Since the Hamiltonian does not depend on time, we can do a time shift to a viscosity solution and get a viscosity solution. So we conclude that u hat is a viscosity solution of the Hamilton-Jacobi equation on epsilon t0 times m. Okay, but epsilon is arbitrary between 0 and t0, so we get that u hat is viscosity solution on 0 time m. Now we are going to proceed to the proof of this theorem 13. Okay, so let me remind you. I want to show that if I restrict my set of Tx to a compact subset of the open strip 0T0 time m, I can find a compact subset K tilde in M, which has the property that U hat of Tx is the infimum of the Uy plus Ht of Yx for the Y in K tilde. Okay? So to do that, in fact, I will need first a control of the action and speed of minimizers. So I'm going to do that. I need some control on the action and speed of minimizers. So when M was compact, this was easy to get using the fact that M was compact and the Euler-Lagrange flow. Here we have to be a little bit more careful, and we have to, it's not completely for free, we need an argument. So let's start with lemma 15. Let gamma defined on AB with value in M be a minimizer. Then, if we want to compute its action, which is also the minimal action to go from gamma A to gamma B in time B minus A, because gamma is a minimizer, it's less than B minus A of the distance of gamma A to gamma B divided by B minus A. So again, A is the function that expresses the boundedness of L on disk bundles. And also, this minimal action is larger than K times the length of gamma minus Ck B minus A, where Ck is a function which allows me to express the superlinearity of L. Okay, and because the length of a path is larger than the distance between the endpoint, I get that this is larger than K times the distance from gamma A to gamma B minus Ck B minus A. And in fact, from this I will get an inequality, which is that, of course, the distance to gamma A, gamma B divided by B minus A is less than the length of gamma divided by B minus A, but I will get also that the length of gamma divided by B minus A is less than the same function A applied to the same number distance of gamma A from gamma A to gamma B divided by B minus A plus Ck divided by K. Okay, so this is for all so the first part is for all K non-negative, and this one is for all K positive because I divide by K. Now, in fact, in lecture 1, we showed that for every T and every XY, we have HT of XY is less than T, A distance of XY divided by T. In fact, for this, we use that HT of XY was less than the action of a minimizer giving the distance of a minimizing geodesic between X and Y parameterized by 0T. And we bound this, the action of the geodesic by the quantity on the right here. Okay, so if we have a minimizer, the action is a minimal time action. Okay, and T is replaced by B minus A, and we get exactly the first inequality that we wanted to get in lemma 15. Now, for k non-negative, by the superlinearity of L, we have L of gamma S, gamma dot S is larger than k times the speed of gamma at S minus C of k. So this is the superlinearity. So if we integrate this inequality and take into account that the length of the curve is larger than the distance between the endpoint and the fact that gamma is a minimizer, we obtain the second set of inequalities that we wanted, is that the minimal action to go in time b minus a from gamma a to gamma b is larger than k, length of gamma, minus ck b minus a, which is larger than k times the distance from gamma a to gamma b minus ck b minus a. So this is the second inequality we needed. Now, if we just manipulate this inequality that we obtained, okay, for k positive, this is equivalent to the minimal action to go from gamma a to gamma b in time b minus a plus ck b minus a divided by k, when k is positive, is larger than the length of gamma, which is larger than the distance. Now, we combine this with the upper bound that we obtained as first inequality, and this gives us exactly the last inequality that we wanted in lemma 15. So what is important in this inequality? It tells you that bounding the length of a minimizer, of a Tonelli minimizer, is the same as bounding the distance between its endpoints. Okay? So if you bound the length, of course you bound the distance, but if you bound the distance, okay, by the right-hand side, you bound the length, provided you look at path parameterized by the same interval, let's say. And this is, of course, something which is not going to be true for every curve, not even for every extremal, okay, because think of an extremal on a compact torus, it might have an accumulation point. So if you look at the sequence tending to 0, the distance of the endpoint on the parts of the extremals is going to go to 0, but the length is going to infinity. So for this, for this inequality, you really need minimizers. Okay. Oh, there is something missing here. Sorry. No, that's okay. Now, what I'm going to do is to bound the derivative, the partial derivative of L with respect to speed. Okay, and the norm of the partial derivative of L with respect to speed, and I'm going to try to obtain an upper bound and a lower bound. So here they are. The upper bound of the norm is less than A norm of V plus 1 plus C of 0. Again, A is the same function A that expresses the boundedness of L on disk bundle, and C is the superlinearity, is a function which expresses the superlinearity of L. Now, for the lower bound, I have to multiply the norm of the derivative by the norm of V, and this will be bigger than K times norm of V minus CK minus A of 0. Now, therefore, if I define D of R, so it's a function D defined from 0 plus infinity to 0 plus infinity, I define D of R as the infimum of the norm of the partial derivative of L with respect to V at xv for all the vectors V which are in norm larger than R. Then this function is clearly non-decreasing from the definition, and we will show that it goes to plus infinity when R goes to infinity, and that its minimum, and that it is 0. In fact, it's going at 0, so 0 will be its minimum. So D of 0 is 0. And by the definition of D, of course, I get now the lower bound, which is easier to express, of the norm. It's D of the norm of V. Okay, so this tells me, for example, that the norm of the partial derivative also goes to infinity when the norm of V goes to infinity uniformly in X. Okay, how do we prove that? Well, we need to use the convexity of L of xv in V, and we express it in the following way: L of x V plus U minus L of xv is larger than the partial derivative of L with respect to V at xv applied to U. We can take now the soup over all vector U of norm less than 1, and here, of course, if we do that, we just obtain the norm of the partial derivative. Okay, so this is less than the maximum for norm of U less than 1 of L of x V plus U minus L of xv. Now, the maximum of the norm of U over the norm of U less than 1 of L of xv is less than A norm of V plus U, which is bounded above by Vx plus 1, but A is non-decreasing, so it's less than A norm of Vx plus 1. And also, in fact, minus C of 0 from its definition is a lower bound of L. And therefore, because I have a lower bound of L, I have an upper bound for minus L of xv, and the upper bound for the first term is A of norm of V plus 1. So this proves the first inequality that I wanted. Okay, it was this one. Now, if I set in the convexity inequality here, U equal minus V, I obtain L of x0 minus L of xv is larger than minus partial derivative of L with respect to V at xv applied to V, okay, because I replaced U by minus V. So, if I look at the product of the norm of the partial derivative by V, it's larger than the partial derivative evaluated at V. And by what I wrote above here, because I have the minus sign here, it's larger than L of xv minus L of x0. Now, by the superlinearity, okay, by the superlinearity, this is larger than k times norm of Vx minus ck, and L of x0, okay, is bounded above by A0, so minus L of x0 is bounded below by minus A0. Okay, so this is exactly the second inequality that I wanted. Now let's look at the definition of D as the infimum of norm of the partial derivative, the norm of the partial derivative of L with respect to V over all points xv with norm of V larger than R. So it's obviously non-negative and non-decreasing. And we know that D of 0 is the infimum of all the norm of the partial derivatives. Since L is superlinear in V, the function, if you fix x and you consider the function as a function of V, x fixed, by the superlinearity in L, it achieves the minimum on the tangent space at x. So that tells me that the partial derivative will have to vanish at some point, namely the minimum. And therefore, d of 0 is going to be equal to 0. Now, we show that d of r is going to plus infinity as r goes to plus infinity. Okay. Since d is non-decreasing, the limit exists in r union plus infinity. Okay, if I look at any k, and I look at the vector v with norm of v larger than r, from 8, I divide by norm of v, so I get the first inequality here. The norm of the partial derivative is larger than k minus ck plus is 0 divided by v. So I can replace the second quantity here by absolute value of ck plus a0 divided by r, because I'm subtracting by a quantity which is larger, okay? And now what I can do, I fix k, I let r go to infinity, and I conclude that the limit when r go to infinity of d is larger than k, but k was arbitrary, so this limit is indeed plus infinity. Now, to get further estimate, we need the concept of energy over a Lagrangian. So let me recall that the Lagrangian E of xv is the Hamiltonian, okay, evaluated at x, the partial derivative of L with respect to v at xv. It's also the sup, okay, for u in the tangent bundle of the partial derivative of L at xv evaluated on u minus L of xu. So this is okay. And in fact, it's also the partial derivative of L with respect to v at xv evaluated at v minus L of xv. You can find proofs of this fact in the references, but I'm sure most of you know it quite well. Okay. So the energy is also constant along any solution of the Euler-Lagrange equation because our Lagrangian does not depend on time. So this is true for along speed curve of extremal, but also it's true along speed curve of minimizers. So I'm going to define the energy of an extremal as the energy of its speed at any point of the speed curve. Okay, the important thing is that quantity E of gamma S, gamma dot S, okay, is independent of S along an extremal. So let me now find a bound on the energy. So I bound the energy at xv between two quantities. From above, I bound it by A, twice the norm of V plus 2C0, and below by the norm of the partial derivative of L at V at the point xv minus A of 1. And therefore, because I bound this below by d of norm of V, I obtain that the energy is larger than d of norm of V minus A1, where d is the non-decreasing function defined in the previous lemma. Again, I'm going to use the convexity of U expressed in the same of L in V expressed in the same way, okay? And if I specialize this time the convexity inequality with u equal v instead of, as I did it before, u equal minus v, I get L of x 2v minus L of xv is larger than the partial derivative of L with respect to v at xv applied to v. Okay? So if I subtract L of xv from both parts, I obtain L of xv 2v minus 2L of xv. In fact, is because if I subtract from the right-hand side here the Lagrangian, I just get the energy. Okay, so I have bounded the energy at xv by L of x2v minus 2L of xv. So L of xv is larger than minus c of 0, and L of x2v is smaller than a at 2vx. So that gives me that the energy is less than a evaluated at 2 norm of v plus 2c of 0. Okay, so this is the first inequality here. So it remains to show the other part, bound the energy from below by the norm of the partial derivative minus the constant a of 1. So I know that the energy is the supremum of the partial derivative applied to u minus L of xu, and the supremum taken over all tangent vector to m at x. And therefore the energy is larger than the supremum taken only on the vector of norm less than 1. Okay, but again L of xu is less than a1 for norm of u less than 1. And so that gives me exactly E of the energy of xv is larger than, and the supremum here is the norm of the derivative, partial derivative. So that gives me exactly the inequality, the energy at xv is larger than the norm of the partial derivative of L with respect to v at xv minus a1. Now I'm going to give the estimate on the speed of an extremal. It uses the preservation of energy along a solution of the Euler-Lagrange equation. There exists a non-decreasing function such that for every curve gamma from AB into M, which satisfies the Euler-Lagrange equation or is an extremal, we have that the supremum of the speed of the derivative is less than eta times the infimum of the speed of the derivative. So there is a function eta, which is finite and non-decreasing, okay, which depend only on the Lagrangian and which tell you that along the solution of the Euler-Lagrange equation, you cannot make the speed as big as you want in norm and make it very close and keep it below some level at some other point, okay? So you control the sup by the inf. This is, of course, very strong, okay? Inequalities of that type are very strong. They occur in other part of mathematics, but it's very strong, I think, you know, something like Harnack inequality. Of course, this is much easier to establish. So, and of course, once you have that, you can show that the supremum is controlled using the same function by the average length of your path. Okay? The supremum of the norm of the speed is less than eta, evaluated at the length of gamma divided by b minus a. So we consider the non-decreasing function introduced in lemma 16. It's 0 at 0 and tends to infinity as r tend to infinity. I can invert it because I'm not sure it's strictly it's strictly decreasing, I can invert it as a function zeta in the usual way. So you define zeta of rho is a supremum for R non-negative of the R such that dr is less than rho. So this function is finite everywhere because the limit of dr is plus infinity, okay? And it's also non-decreasing, and it verifies zeta d at R is larger than R. Okay, because zeta d of R is the supremum of the R prime such that dr prime is less than dr. So R is in the set here of R prime such that dr prime is less than dr, and therefore the supremum is larger than R. And the fact that the function is defined for all rho positive comes from the fact that d of 0 is 0. Okay, so this set is never empty for any rho positive. So now consider a solution of the Euler-Lagrange equation and pick up two parameters at which the norm of the speed attains the minimum, called S-min, and the norm of the speed attains the maximum, okay, which you call S-max. Now, the inequalities that we obtained before, okay, on the bound on the energy by A2 norm of V x plus T of 0 on the right, and D norm of V minus A1, sorry, on the right, and the other one was on the left. So we apply the left part at the minimum in norm speed. So we get A 2 times the norm, the minimum norm of the speed of gamma plus 2 of C0 is larger than the energy. And at the maximum, we apply the right-hand side inequality. So the energy at the maximum is larger than D times the norm of the speed at the maximum minus A of 1. But the two energies are the same because by conservation of energy, and therefore I obtain that A 2 times the minimum in norm speed plus 2C0 plus A1, I put the A1 on the other side, is larger than D of the maximum norm of the speed. Now, zeta is non-decreasing and zeta of dr is R, so I end up with zeta evaluated at A itself evaluated at twice the minimum norm of speed plus 2 of C0 plus A1 is larger than the maximum of the norm of the speed, okay? Now it suffices to define eta as a function from 0 plus infinity to 0 plus infinity by eta r is zeta of A2R plus 2 of C0 plus A1, because zeta and A are non-decreasing, so is eta. So we obtain the function eta that we wanted, okay? Because we obtain that the maximum norm of the speed is less than eta, the minimum norm of the speed. So this is just a translation of this equation using the definition of eta. Okay, for the second inequality, okay, we want to show that the supremum of the norm of the speed is less than eta, the length of gamma divided by b minus a. Okay, so this follows from the inequality we established and the fact that if you compute the length, it's computed by integrating the norm of the speed. So it's certainly bigger than b minus a, the minimum of the speed, okay? and you use the fact that eta is non-decreasing to obtain this inequality from this one. Now we are going to do something with minimizers now. So what we did in corollary 19 is valid for all extremals. Now we do it for minimizers. We can find two non-decreasing functions such that the sup of the norm of the speed of a minimizer defining on the interval AB is less than eta bar at the number which is the action of your minimizer divided by B minus A. Okay, we can call that the average action. And also the sup of the norm of the speed is bounded above by eta tilde, so the other non-decreasing function. The distance, the average distance, so d of gamma A, gamma B divided by B minus A. So in lemma 15, we showed that the minimal action is larger than k, the length of gamma, minus ck B minus A. Okay, so we obtain that the length of gamma is less than the minimal action plus C1 of B minus A. We applied it with k equal 1. And therefore, we use the function eta from before, because the minimizer satisfies the Euler-Lagrange equation. The sup of the norm of the speed is less than eta, the average length, and from the inequality here, the average length is less than C of 1, because you divide by B minus A, plus the average action. Okay, so this tells us that the sup of the norm of the derivative is less than eta bar, the average action, where we define eta bar as eta S plus C of 1. And of course, eta bar is also non-decreasing, like eta. To prove the second inequality, okay, the sup of the norm of the speed is less than eta tilde, the average distance. We recall that we showed that the average minimal action is less than A at the average distance in lemma 15. And therefore, by what we proved, the sup of the norm of the derivative is less than eta bar, the average energy, sorry, the average action, okay? But eta bar is non-decreasing, so it's less than eta bar A, the average distance, okay? We can replace by this quantity and obtain a bound above. And therefore, it suffices to define eta tilde as eta bar composed with A. It's finite everywhere and non-decreasing as composition of two functions which are finite everywhere and non-decreasing. And I'll stop here for today.
Thank you.
Any question?
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay.
See you Thursday.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
Pas de quoi.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.